I'd like to bring this work session to order, and because it's a work session, we're just going to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance and then get into the agenda itself, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. The first agenda item is the board deliberations. How is that?
All right, folks. This is it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, because we've got to publish your proposed budget by tomorrow. So Lance, Dory, and I are not sleeping all evening. So decisions have got to get made this afternoon. With that, you have the latest, greatest, large version budget, so you know where you're at based on what you did yesterday. You have a comparison of utility savings and potential tax increases, because the brilliant Tom Stanley yesterday, after you guys left, we met a bunch of us, and he said, don't forget, these people have all saved all this money in their water bills. So yes, you're raising, don't say that. He came up, I completely forgot about this. So you're increasing taxes, but they're saving a heck of a lot of money, and that's why I had Lance put this together for you. So that would be something we'd put in your budget message. And Mayor, before we start, I just got a couple of things. Some good news, some not great news. Yesterday you were talking about the community services and making another full-time position. Lance did an analysis today and the part-time numbers were off. So what was given to you yesterday was not the correct information. And Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with the amount of part-time hours that you have in the budget, it would be an additional 27,000. So, you know, we were off when you made that vote, and I want to make sure you're aware of that in case you want to bring that back up again. So I apologize on that.
But that's a savings from yesterday's number?
No. Actually, it's increase. Yes. That's why you may want to bring that back up. Yeah. The part-time hour amount that Dory and Elena used was not the correct amount. That's in the budget. That's the important part, what's in the budget. It may have been hours that were done in the past, but that's not what's in the budget, so.
Hey, Lance, when we're talking about, you're talking about the hourly rate. So those part-time people, did they put in overtime during the course of the year?
I'm looking at this from a budget standpoint, not from what they actually spent in the past year. We had no overtime budgeted for them. We only had 700 hours a person in the budget, and 30 hours a person would be a couple things. That'd be over 1,500 hours, and it would require that they be in the state pension plan, which we hadn't budgeted for either. So they may have done some overtime. I'd have to go back and look at their history, but I don't. Compared to what we had in the budget, there's a big difference there.
I pulled the previous 2 years' budgets just to see what we included in those, and in 2022, 2023, there were full part-time facilitators and 2 custodians, and then the full-time employees, for a total of $40,000 that was budgeted. And then last year they had taken 1 or 2 of the part-time positions and made it a full-time. So there was 1 full-time employee and 2 facilitators, 2 custodians, and 1 admin, just to give you some background on that.
Was there overtime?
No, because we had 2 facilitators last year. 1 left and 1 was working up to 40 hours sometimes, but not regularly.
But they were scheduled to work 30 hours?
I don't believe it was capped off because she was the only one we had.
No, I mean, when there was two, what were they supposed to be working each one? I'm trying to figure out the total dollar amount, so.
But I think, and here's what Lance is trying to say, what I was mentioning earlier. You've got to go with what's in the budget right now. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. He only has so many numbers in that proposed budget. So unless you're going to adjust all that, what you did yesterday is going to be an increased 27,000 to the proposed budget in order to achieve what you voted to achieve yesterday, if that makes all sense.
It does make sense, but if, my point is that if the budget that was presented to us didn't match up the past years, or we lowballed it this year, for lack of a better term, I don't know, then in the past, we were spending X, and now we're proposing X minus Y. So I'm just trying to figure that part out. But we'll move on, and we'll talk about this later on if we have to, okay?
I do have, in your budget book, there are some prior year numbers. So these are part-time people we're talking about, and there's an account for part-timers. So let me just look at it real quick and tell you.
We'll get back to it, Lance, so why don't you look it up and then we'll report out later.
Did you have another issue?
Yeah,
Mary?
I do. Electricities, we just found out, remember we were talking about this yesterday, the number that Electricities gave us is not correct. So Larry worked with Electricities all day today. We just got the corrected amount, and it's down, what, $1 million, Larry? Because we literally, as he walked in, we just got the number. Yeah, Larry, if you can go to the mic.
So the projected revenue from Electricities corrected for weather in their algorithm, they were about 3 million kilowatts off, 7,369,000 as opposed to the previous number, which was 9 million and odd.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Are you saying that the bill that they submitted to us before, we were expected to pay out or receive 9 million?
No, that was, when we pay out, it's going to be 5,925,000 projected. But the corrected usage in the algorithm, which includes weather and every other thing that actuarials use, was 9 million and some odd, and that's in our number. I don't have that one in front of me.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad thing.
It's a bad thing.
Okay.
So our revenue is down
To 3 million?
from 2,900,000 to 1,400,000.
For future undergrounds or
Yes,
whatever we
it'll
do.
affect the fund
Right, so
balance.
that impacts capital projects in the revenue that we have.
Okay.
I want to be sure I followed that. We're going to get $1 million less or $1 million more? Well, crap.
Told you I had bad news.
Yeah, it was, Lance had pointed out that their projection was about 20% high based on the previous years, so we went back and challenged those numbers for confidence, and there was less confidence than we anticipated.
That was
That's
very
the short version.
diplomacy. Thank you, Larry.
Can I add a couple things to what Larry just said? So these numbers have just come in since I've been in this building. So this is happening in real time. When we reduced the revenue, like Larry said, apparently they had 3 million too many kilowatt hours in what we would charge the customers for. And that reduced our revenue from 9.2 million to 7.3 and change. So it's down $1.8 million. They also reduced the amount of money slightly that we would pay for the electricity that we resell by like 300,000 and change. The upshot is, what's important here is that when you look at the electric fund, prior to this change, it would have indicated that we would have added $1.3 million to the fund balance to go toward the underground project. With the numbers that are currently in the budget, once we make those changes, we are now taking out $200,000 from the fund balance just to make this year. So it might be important to go back and look at the details of the electric a little bit more, because it does eat away at the fund balance by $200,000 with these new numbers that are about 10 minutes old.
But it would be my recommendation, because of timing, that if we do not know, put forward to the public hearing what we do know, and then you can change it after we do the analysis, because it's got to get approved today, one way or the other.
Well, I think we can do that and be totally transparent on it, because those are the numbers we have. We're working off of what we know right now. And it may change. And we as the city and the other members of the Electric City, it's not really the Electric City Co-op, it's a co-op of and Electric City runs it as the admin head, have to figure out why this is going backwards. Now, they raised their rates by 6%, but $1 million is more than 6%.
Correct. It was year-over-year budget. This is why we were challenging this. The budget would have been about 20% higher revenue than it was in last year's budget. And in fact, the budget that they just sent just now is actually less. It's a little bit less than last year's budget, or the year we're in now was, but it's about where I think we're going to end up the year. I don't think we're going to make budget this year, and I think this next budget is about where we're going to end this year.
So our kilowatt usage should actually only be going up as we add more homes to the thing. Not dramatically, because we haven't had that huge jump yet, but and our costs versus our profit margin would have gone down 6% because of the raise in the rate. But I don't know how that equates to $1 million. I really don't understand how that happens, but we'll have to work on this offline and make it work somehow.
Yep, we will.
Okay.
And then the only other item I have when you're ready is, this is the good news, is we have some good news for fire and EMS, but whenever you're ready, Mayor, to discuss that. So that's all I have. It's all up to you guys.
Well, let's do fire EMS so we can get them out of here.
Let's hear some good.
Basically, this is concerning EMS. So, we've put in for the 3 new EMS positions, and that totals to $199,739. So, after we've looked at our transports and our revenue, we have found out that we have been charging drastically lower rates than what we were supposed to be charging. We've consulted with the county today, and we've adjusted our rates already so that they can go into effect. As of Monday, we'll be charging the higher rates. With that being said, the projection, instead of putting in $370,000 for this budget on revenue on the EMS side, we can up it to $566,880. That's the new revenue line, which that adds $196,000 to the revenue, which will almost cover, with the exception of $3,000, which will cover the 3 EMS positions, so that it would be, and this is not a one-time thing. This is a thing that would roll year to year as the call volume went up.
So my question is that number based on everybody paying, or is that based on your 50% paying?
That is based on the projections of our collection rate, yes.
Of your collection rate?
Yes, that is based on our collection rates.
And is what kind of percentage is that jump on from the, in other words, I'm wondering if our collection rate will drop now, because you put in $500 to transport, and I got Blue Cross Blue Shield and they pay $300, and that's all you're going to get out of them. You've got payment, so it's not a default, but it's less. So I mean, in the whole medical world, that seems to be the game that's played.
Right.
And so I'm trying to figure out, is the 50% based on people who pay nothing because of their circumstances? I'm not questioning why that happens, but is that what that 50% means? And then as you raise the number, how confident do we have that the insurance companies are going to honor that at all? Because you can make it 1,000 if they say, I'm only paying you 300, that's what you get.
I was told by our data person at the fire station and the billing company that this 566,000 is a very conservative number. They did not fluff this. They did not increase it. I mean, I really can't answer your question, Mayor. I wish I could, but I can't answer that. But I've been told that this number is a solid conservative number.
Well, since we, I'm sorry, I just have one more thought.
okay.
Since we have a timeline on this, we're going to have to go with those numbers to make our decision on. But I would request that you look, if my ramblings made any sense about what I was trying to say, I want to know the real return from insurance companies, which are 90-some-odd% of your payers. What are they paying now, and why would we expect them to pay more even if you raise your rates?
I can look into that.
Okay.
The only thing that I can say is that after last week's meeting with the billing company that we had, we are starting aggressive collections. We have not been doing that. If people didn't pay their bill, we just dropped it. But we're changing that to an aggressive billing, and they're going to be going to collections. So I think that's going to help even more with the increase in revenue.
It certainly may, but that's, yet to be seen how that's going to be. Lo, what was your question?
I remember that you said yesterday that you were going to have the billing company more aggressively collect, because if if insurance only covers the 300, then it's us poor saps, the patients who still owe the 200. And he's going to come get you before he comes get me. I remember that.
We know in an old community like us, Medicare is the base. And anything medical, Medicare is the base, and then it goes up a couple of points depending on everything else. So I think that's what we got to look at. We might be charging more, but as the mayor said, are we going to get anything more from the insurance companies? That's the big question. It'd be interesting to see what they say. Because like I said, Medicare is the base for everything medical.
Well, and all I can go off of is what the billing company's telling me, and then what the county is saying as well. After consulting with them, I did not even realize. I did realize they were going up on their rates this year because I attended the county commissioners meeting last month, and that's how I found that out. Last year we missed the increase, so we have missed revenue over the last year that we could have been charging because I missed that they increased their revenue. But the county, when they've increased theirs, they're collecting more money. That's a good sign for us. That if the county's collecting more money, then we're going to be able to collect more money by increasing our bills.
Another way to look at that is we may have been paying below that. If that's the case, the insurance company's just smiling at us because they weren't having to match. They weren't having to go up to the Medicare.
Correct.
That's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it could be.
Right.
Chief, could you give us an example on these new fees versus the old fees?
Yes, sir. So, in essence, a basic life transport or BLS, basic life support transport, just a normal transport, we've been charging $300. The county rate has been $399.12. A basic life transport with any type of medication given, it's been $400, and it's increased to $638.58. For specialty transports, a paramedic transport, we've been charging $622, and the increase is $1,297.13. We've been charging $10.12 for each mile. That's to the call, and then to the hospital, we charge $10.12 a mile, and actually the rate is $13.53 a mile that we can charge now.
Just repeat that last rate. You said 10-12 to the call.
$10.12 per mile to the call and to the hospital, and then the new rate is going to be $13.53 a mile that we can charge.
That's you leave the station, you go to the house or wherever, and then from there to the hospital.
Yes,
Mileage all the way.
mileage. You charge for the transport, and then you add the mileage onto the transport charge.
Actually, since we've got EMS here, it's actually cheaper for somebody as opposed to having EMS out in the county where they're having to come in to get us.
That is correct, yes, when you're looking, especially with mileage. Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So the rate increase in this new revenue, is that based on the existing infrastructure you have for EMS now, as opposed to adding these 3 positions?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question from the follow-up from yesterday.
Yes, sir.
We were talking about mutual aid, and when I got home, I started thinking about, I'm asking a question here. Do we have a document with the county that they no longer have to come here, come to Southport? I wouldn't think that we would.
No, we don't have
So
a document.
the citizens of Southport pay county taxes. So we pay for their rescue. That's not mutual aid. They just have to come here. I mean, I'm not sure how I figured that out to be mutual aid. They're required to come here if we ask them to come here. Now, it's to their benefit that you're here, or the paramedics are here, because then they don't have to make that run. But I wouldn't refer that as mutual aid that they're calling to help us. We pay for that service. So
Well, it's the same difference. I mean, we pay for the sheriff's office too, but we have our own police department. I mean, but they come if the police department requests them. Right now, I mean, the way it's been, we respond to the emergency with our ambulance, and they come with their ambulance as
Right.
well. But since we've got the paramedics and we've got the paramedic program up and running, they don't come unless we're on another call, and then they do come to answer that call. Because if the medic's on a call down here on Moore Street and there's a call on Atlantic Avenue, then they're going to have to respond to that call.
right. So we have, if I remember right, we have a rescue on Oak Island, out that way. And we have one at Boiling Springs and one at St. James, you said?
Yes, sir.
And so
They're
now
bases there.
two rescues are tied up down to the southern end of the county. And they know there's actually 4 rescues here. Are they more likely to take somebody from us, our area, because they know we're going to be the one who's going to be backfilling them?
They are only going to use us, they're only going to take us from our area if all of their ambulances are tied up on a call. That's the only time that they're going to request us to leave the city and do standby or go on a call.
I think the mayor's question, though, is do they rotate?
They rotate.
they-
So if they only have 8 crews that showed up,
They move trucks all over the county.
correct, but they're
Yes.
more likely to, if I was them, I would move the,
It's a unit-based dispatch, so they're going to call the closest unit to wherever the call is. So if there's a call in St. James and base 4 is occupied with an ambulance, then base 4's ambulance is going to go to St. James.
no, I'm sorry. What I meant is now you only got 8 units and you've got supposed to man 10. And they have to move people around to kind of space them out. Are we part of that spacing on a routine basis?
Not a part of that. Only if the only time that we are called to do standby is if every resource is depleted. The county has all their ambulances
I
on
want to make,
a,
the reason why I'm asking you all these questions is so that we get it on the record, so that when we get asked all these questions later on, we've asked the right questions of you while you're
Right.
here. I want to make sure that everybody's clear, because as of yesterday, people were not very clear about some stuff. Whether they should have been or not, that doesn't make any difference. Robert, you had something?
Well, yeah, I think, just, again, for the record, how many other municipalities in Brunswick County have EMS?
With paramedics.
none that I know of. None with paramedics. The only other municipality that runs an ambulance service, I know St. James runs an ambulance service. I don't think any other municipality in the county runs an ambulance service.
Okay, I didn't know the answer to that, so. The other thing, we currently have 2 ambulance at headquarters,
Yes.
and we're adding a 3rd, which we've ordered, that should be here within a year or so.
Yes. It's replacing.
So the one we have, we're gonna get rid of, or can we move it to one of our other, I mean, is there any benefit to having it as well?
Well, so we have two ambulances at headquarters, and then we have a 3rd ambulance that's like a backup, and we rotate those 3 ambulances. The 3rd one that's the backup that we're replacing is close to 100,000 miles, and it's getting some age on it. We are going to decommission that and surplus it and sell it once we get the other ambulance.
Sort of quietly over here, you know, why do we still have this? And my instinct, and I'm going to say this, I don't know if this is true or not, but from being the county seat, from being the person that, the city that most people would come to if they needed something, if they needed help, we've built this EMS system. People, charter members started it, fought hard to keep it. And it's sort of, we're just used to this kind of thing. And we're not used, we don't normally give up all of our services. We're proud of providing our own. My heart sinks when we sit here and talk about forcing people to pay. Might be afraid to use that service and get to the hospital one day because you came and got my mother this year. And I don't know what you charged her, but it doesn't matter. So it's like we're transitioning into a world that's a lot more accountability, a lot more pay your bill. We can't be friendly neighbors anymore. It's depressing in a way. So thank you for all the information. But I feel like we're just trying to hold on to being the hegemon. I don't know if it's the right word. People correct to be the hegemon, the leader, the people that, you know, this is what we were until about 20, 30 years ago.
Well, and when I became the full-time fire chief, that's one of the first things the Board of Aldermen approached me with, because the EMS was a standalone department then, and the city was getting ready to spend over $1 million to upfit the downtown rescue squad with sleeping quarters, kitchen. Alderman Mosteller was on the board, Chief Coring was on the board then, and so the board approached me and said, can you take over EMS in the fire department? And we did, and we saved the city from having to do that because we already had the headquarters. So we just moved everybody in and created that division of EMS. And the reason that we've continued it is because basically response times with the county. Average response times are 9 to 12 minutes for a county unit to get into Southport. So that's why we've continued to do EMS. And to Alderman Carroll's response, I forgot Ballhead Island does have ambulance service too. So those are the other 2 municipalities that have ambulance services.
And the EMS service is part of the fire district, is that correct?
That is correct.
So in addition to fire services, we provide EMS services.
Yes.
Well, to be clear on that, we dispatch our people to ETJ, the fire district, but the fire district does not pay for EMS.
No,
correct?
sir, they do not.
And so, probably as a warning for next year, probably we'll be asking for two different separate documents. And one of the questions that we would like, not today, is can you tell us the exact amount of money that we're paying for EMS so that we can say, we pay for this much money, which equates to this much tax rate because of this issue. And let the citizens know that how much it costs to run this service, because this board had a part to that, the old board had a part to that, and we need to market that better. About, it costs us money, we're talking about raising taxes here to do things, but we need to show them this is what you're getting for that. You get 4 minutes, or you can wait 19 minutes.
And I would love to work with the manager, and we'll put our heads together to get a letter to the county manager about seeing if we can get some funding from the county.
Well, the only question I have about that, when you do that, once you take that first dollar, you could find yourself in Calabash. And I'd rather not take the money if that's the other side of the coin.
Well,
do they own you once they got it?
I'm looking at the premise of us providing coverage in the fire district outside the city limits, paying for that.
Okay.
Not just giving us money to run to Calabash or Holden Beach or wherever, just covering
If
the
that
rest
was
of the
it, that
fire.
would be terrific. My fear was that we would be put into the round robin, and you could be stationed because they ran out of people. You're now deployed as opposed to making a run.
I think the other notable thing to mention that the mayor just said was until 2 years ago, these were separate budgets, I believe. And so it's much easier to look at that EMS budget and say, if 4 minutes is important to your life, it's going to cost you 4 cents. But if you're good with waiting an extra 15 until the county gets here, then it's free. But you might not be here to pay it either way. So having those two budgets kind of more separated, and I don't know why we.
They are, yeah. Yeah, we separated them 2 years ago.
They're separated in
Oh,
the budget
excuse
book.
me. Yes.
Yes, they
So
are.
what is the total? Give me that number. Thank you. Do I have it?
Lance will have
Yeah,
to give us
I can
the-
help you with that.
So I think that's what we're trying to.
In your budget book, if you look at page 58, under the fire tab, fire and rescue are divided into two
So
separate pieces in this budget.
Got it.
And so the question you're getting at, if you go to page 59, there's a total rescue number at the bottom of $441,000. No, I don't. Well, no, this is the budget. It's the budget book. As budgeted, that's what rescue cost, which is worth 3.1 cents at the current tax rate.
But we can offset some of that from the transport fees, that
Well-
are coming in.
Unless you add 199 back in, then you're still at the same number.
Gotcha. Okay.
Chief, let's go back to the transport fees for just 1 second.
Yes, sir.
When you make a transport, how is that collected? I know how it was collected with me, like I told you earlier. I'm laying there half dead, and the guy says, "Got a credit card?"
Yes, sir. It's collected now by a third party.
By a
We
third
have a
party.
third-party company. We turn the paperwork in, they do the collection for us. No, sir. No, sir. That might be a good plan, though, but
And you are going to be a service provider for the
Especially
hospital
when
where
they're a
they'll
little
pay.
bit comatose.
yes, that's correct. Ma'am, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, give them the bill while they're still a little comatose.
Are there any other questions?
Lance, the number with the 199, that's 640, right?
Correct, but if we add
So the
another
total
100
budget for that department is $640,000.
assuming we do not add the extra 196,000 worth of revenue that the chief just put on the table. But if you think about it this way, the 199, the 196 basically is a wash. So you were talking about maybe 445 the cost of EMS. And divide that by 145,000, you're getting just a little over 3 cents of tax, of your tax rate.
I apologize for.
No, sir.
And I have to give credit, it was Robert Carroll that came up with the idea about breaking this apart and stuff. I just stole his idea.
And I think this is going to be, that just the way you explained it, what's your life worth? You know, that people will be complaining about a tax increase, and this is one of the ways that we can explain it.
Any other questions of the chief?
Well, just to clarify, with regards to EMS, there wouldn't be, based on these new numbers, there wouldn't be a real increase in taxes for the service.
That's correct.
That is correct.
There's no increase in taxes for this service
If
this
you
year.
adopt the revenue that he just mentioned, yes.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we're buying a new ambulance. I mean, there's a lot of revenue, expense to go with this. I guess my question is, what would it mean if we didn't fund the 3 positions? Can you kind of tell me again
Yes,
what that
ma'am.
looks like and,
Yes, ma'am.
and why you're asking for this?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so if we do not fund the 3 positions, we do have a lot of days where we may not have coverage and may not have the ambulance on the road. You're still going to get a paramedic response because the paramedic is in a QRV, but we are struggling severely to cover the ambulance and having 2 EMTs. So what we're doing right now is we're covering 1 slot, and then the volunteers will still be able to cover the other slot on the ambulance. There's 2 people on the ambulance, and then the medic is in a QRV, a quick response vehicle. So when you get a call at your house, if it's a paramedic level, the medic gets off of the QRV and gets on the ambulance, and then you get the proper care that you need. But if it's not, we keep the medic in service so that if there's another call with a higher acuity level, then they can respond to that as well. And we backfill with other people at the station to roll an ambulance, whatever we need to do. But so if we don't fund the 3 EMTs, I'm just telling you straight up, there may be times when the ambulance may not be in service because it has been a complete struggle to continue to keep people signing up on the ambulance. I cannot take firemen off the fire truck and put them on the ambulance because then that's going to affect our insurance rating if we have structure fire. And that's what we've been doing some, is trying to cover the gaps, but it's been increasingly hard. I had told Chief Treadway before coming here, a month ago, we were doing great with EMS, but every day now we're having gaps, and we're not having people sign up because we've just lost 6 more people off the EMS roster that have went and got full-time jobs at the county. So we're a training ground. They get their EMT, they come to us, they get training, they get good, and the county says, come work for us, and we're just paying them $125 or $150 for a 12-hour shift. They can go out there, they have an open door for overtime. So they're taking our people. And a lot of our EMS people are loyal, and they say, well, we're still going to volunteer. We're still going to be here. But then when it comes to you got an open door for as much overtime as you want to work at the county, they're not going to come down here and work for $150 for 12 hours when they can make $25 and $30 an hour working there. It just doesn't add up. Even as loyal as they are, they can't do it.
All right, unpopular opinion. What if we lean into medics, hire additional medics for the fire department, and get rid of our EMS? Will the county reallocate units to come closer to us so we are no longer a training ground and training people that then go to the county?
I mean, you can do whatever your pleasure is. I mean, but I would not recommend that, no. Because you're going to lose all your transport fees then, because we're not going to have ambulances. So you're going to lose $566,000 of revenue. Boom, right there, it's gone. And you're still going to pay for a paramedic. So the way we're doing it, we're offsetting the cost by the transport fees. So that's an important commodity, having those transport fees.
But what if we get rid of it altogether and we just have medics in the area through the fire department like the other areas of the county who don't have ambulatory service?
Like I said, that's your pleasure. You can do that. But when, you can't get a medic in Southport for 4 minutes and your loved one's having a heart attack, it's going to be on you, not me.
All right, everybody's going to EMT school.
So really, the EMT conversation is the same as the fire conversation. It's the volunteers that are slipping away, that process.
That same process, yes.
Well, do you have, when I talked about this, about raising that fee, you were concerned for a couple of things. One of them is that there's people currently who are volunteers that are making more money than the firemen. For the time being, I'm less concerned about that, but you have to actually be in the trenches with them, so I understand it's more of a concern to you. Do you have the same issue if we raise the fee from the 125 for the EMTs? Would that help have more of them available? Right now, I'm not asking you to make a choice between A and B. I'm just asking you, would this also augment that issue?
The same EMT volunteers that were in the meeting Tuesday night with the firemen, we had a joint meeting. And we have the same number. We have, I think we have maybe 10 right now or 12 EMTs that are covering the ambulance. I just don't look for that number to go up. We just got out of an EMT class with the county. I think we got 2 applications, and we just lost 6 to the county.
So what I'm hearing is the county is paying better than we are. They are staffing more easily than we are because they're paying better than we are. If we get so right now, if our ambulance is on a call, if the county's ambulances are all on calls, one of our firemen who is a medic rolls and shows up within 4 minutes. Is that how that works?
We have 1 fireman that's a medic. We don't have a lot of firemen that are medics.
Okay, so when we're in that position, if that one particular fireman is not on at that point in time, then our citizens are waiting for an ambulance? Is that? Okay.
Yeah.
And then on days when there are multiple calls and we are helping the county, when we are out on 211 helping with something, and there's a call in Southport, what happens?
Most of the time, we back up with admin staff. I'll respond to calls. Chief Treadway responds. He's an EMT. I'm an EMT. We send the fire truck if they're medical certified. We try to fill in the gaps that way. I can provide basic life support. If somebody here stops breathing, we can do CPR. I'm trained in that. Chief Coring's trained in it. We just back up and fill the gaps the best we can. And then the county, if you get, they'll send the medics or our ambulance to the highest level of call that there is. Sometimes they have to stack calls. There's times we have 5 and 6 EMS calls going on at one time in the city.
And if we don't have EMS in the city, let's just say we get rid of the entire department, it goes away. We sell the ambulances or the county picks them up, that whole kind of merger like what we did with the water and sewer, our EMS goes to county, so it's no longer a city asset. We no longer have the overhead costs. Our citizens aren't paying the tax for it through Southport. They should, in theory, have coverage from the county. And we have fire and police who are trained for basic life saving to, in theory, be able to assist until an ambulance could arrive. Is that correct?
I didn't hear the last part of your question.
So we have trained first responders, both fire and police, who could, in theory, do immediate life-saving measures until an ambulance arrived. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If they're available. They might be out on a fire call.
That's true. Yes, sir. If they're available.
So are all our paid firemen EMS trained?
All of our paid firemen, I am requiring them to be duly trained.
Okay.
They have to have some type of medical certification, either a medical responder or an EMT certification.
And
all of them right now do have a medical certification. I'm pretty sure every one of them have at least a medical responder certification, which is the lowest medical certification you can have.
But if they get the higher one, do they get more money?
Yes, they would.
There's a system to make sure that they're compensated for the extra training and skill set that they bring to the table.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think this is a very interesting discussion and one that we should continue perhaps with a workshop. What are you looking at me about? I mean, what I'm saying is before us right now is the budget. And we can't restructure the fire and EMS department this afternoon. So let's think about that later and deal with this budget. What did you think I was going to say? Don't answer that. Oh, my God.
Just one more statement here is.
Yes, sir.
We need to learn the lesson from the loss of the wastewater treatment plant. Sometimes we have services that pay bills that are sort of discrete. You're probably helping pay the power bill or the water bill at the fire station. There are hidden, intangible things that we get from these things that when we do away with them, we find out we really needed them really bad. I would never want to be a part of anything to do away with any more services in Southport. I've learned my lesson once.
I'll say this. I've been on the fire department for 33 years. Okay, I've been to the majority of city meetings I've been to over the last 33 years. 2 times they have talked about getting rid of EMS in Southport, and I thought they were going to burn the city hall down. That's exactly what happened. You can ask Chief Corin. We've been through it. We've sat on committees. We've had workshops. We've been through this before, and that's exactly what happened.
All right, but based on that and for the purpose of time, can we agree to make up the 3,000 and move forward?
I mean, certainly, to me,
I don't
that's a
think
better...
I don't think any of us sitting here today came in expecting this news. We came in really prepared to make a difficult decision.
I got it
So-
I got it just before I walked in here, too.
Yeah,
But
I
I
would-
think, like Alderman Davis said, you're here to do the budget, put it in, you got a public hearing. If the public doesn't like it, hopefully, they're gonna let you know that. And we'll make sure that it's mentioned during the presentation. But you gotta solidify the budget today.
Is anybody going to make a motion?
Okay.
Are you going to hire the 3 paramedics, 3 EMTs, and with all the financial give and take, it was going to cost us an initial $4,000?
This is not a voting meeting, so we're expressing our viewpoint to reach consensus.
Yeah, but you voted yesterday.
We voted,
We've
yeah.
got to know what it is this board wants to do.
Okay.
We have to give them direction. And the only way to do it is to put it in a motion. You're not voting to actually do it. You're actually voting to put it into the budget.
Good point.
Okay?
Good point. Okay. I'll do it if I can have the words that say it correctly.
We should have prayed.
What? No, we got,
I would just say that you make a motion that you want to add the 3 EMTs to the budget along with the corresponding additional revenues, and that the chief will make up the $3,000. We'll figure it out.
I move that we add the 3 EMTs to the budget as presented by Chief Drew,
And the additional revenue.
and the additional revenue.
All right, there's a motion on the floor, there's a second. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand, please. All opposed? It's 5-1. We move on to the next topic. I would ask, as a sidebar, to follow up on the conversation we had about the figure that we have here, what it costs. If you could help us with the wording with the manager so that we could kind of push that out. Do you want to live or die?
I think, I agree with you. I think that 3.1 cents is gonna, it's certainly something we should discuss when we present this.
Yeah, but I want to socialize it before the June 17 meeting, somehow.
So the only other thing is if there's any other outstanding items that any of the board members want to bring up, and then you got to make some decision.
I think we need to go back to the events person that we had incorrect numbers for yesterday, because at the additional $27,000, that doesn't make as much sense as it did yesterday.
I would disagree, because certainly part-time people get overtime. And if we are going to try to ramp up the amount of revenue we make out of this, then they're going to have to work overtime. In North Carolina, do we pay overtime on a weekly for the amount of hours of the week or per day? How is that calculated? I'm thinking in terms of the fact that, Alana, you said that there was someone who was here from 9 in the morning until 11 at night. That's a lot of time. Is time over 40 or time over 8 hours a day?
It's per week.
I'm sorry?
It's per 40-hour week.
Okay.
So that's anything over 40 then, as opposed to over 8 in 24.
Unless they're part-time, and then it would be anything over the 30.
Based on our pay periods, it is still 40 hours in a week. Even if they're only supposed to work 30, if they work 32, then they do not get overtime for those 2 extra hours.
Lance, were you able to find the history? And you've got to talk into your mic. People are having problems at home hearing us.
Okay. So this history is for the community building account for part-time employees. I don't have all the names and I don't have all the hours and all that, but there's nothing in here that indicates that anybody was working 30 hours a week consistently. We've got, in the last year, 2023, for however, and right now, if it was fully staffed, there would be 2 facilitators and 2 custodians that are part-time in there. We spent $36,556 in total in this part-time account last fiscal year. Through 9 months of this year, we've spent less than $25,000. There may be some more since we're past it, but this is the number I've got. And the budget was for $44,800. So the budget made perfectly good sense in context of the history. Whether people were really working 30 hours or not, or are today working 30 hours, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that looking at the numbers that I've pulled out of the expense account for part-time employees, it would not add up to me that we would have multiple people with 30 hours a week or 1,500 plus hours a year.
Okay, so Alderman Kelly, are you making a motion?
Lance, so just so I understand, there's no overtime in our part-time employees.
A part-time employee would have to work more than 40 hours in a week to get overtime. I don't have I have an account for overtime. I don't have an account for part-time overtime. But the general overtime was basically nothing. It was $64 last year.
Okay.
And it's through 9 months of this year, it's $308. So there's very little overtime, and that would be for anybody, not just a part-time employee.
So the $27,000 addition to the budget based on adding a full-time person that we discussed yesterday, where does that number come from? Can you explain that to me again?
Sure. So a full-time person, obviously we have 40 hours a week, which is, more than we have in the budget for two part-time people. And that person would also be participating in the state retirement system, which is 13.6% of earnings. That's the city's cost. That person would be participating in the 401k program, which is 5% of earnings, city's cost. And that person would presumably enroll in the city healthcare plans, which for the city portion is right around $10,000 a person. So when you add all of those pieces together, and then you subtract out what's in the budget today, that's where it comes from. There's a whole lot more than, and of course payroll taxes. You would have more payroll taxes for more hours, but it's really the benefits is the biggest piece of it that's going to jump that number up by this $27,000.
Just before a motion's made, it might be a good thing for us to kind of tidy up where we are right now. We've got 400,000 in the budget from the 1.2 million.
Would you like to look at the big piece of paper here?
We've got so many big, but I'm just, if you'll just say yes or no to we've got the 400,000 in there. So what is that, or not yet?
No, sir. So if you look at the big piece of paper you've got, I've been trying to simplify this view because I understand where you're coming from, right? And this has nothing to do with what has happened today, which is pretty much neutral at this point. Yesterday we started the day with a unadjusted with no 400,000 or anything else credited in, and we started with the $989,000 gap. The puts and takes from yesterday amounted to a reduction of $87,000, so we started today with a $901,000 gap. Chief Drew's in and out numbers with the revenue and the three EMTs would bring the number to this $1,101,000 plus probably another. I'm sorry, it would leave it at the 901 plus maybe like another 3,000. So maybe we're at like 905 is the gap. And then down below are your choices, your menu, as it stands today for closing that gap. So that the $1.2 million that you see there of the reserve funds, that's where the 400 could come out of that you were referring to. So you've got about a $900 and call it $5,000 number to fill. If you took 400 out of the $1.2 million, you'd have a $505,000 number to fill.
And that's about 3.5 cents at this point in the game, that we'd have to raise taxes just to meet this budget before taking into consideration we need to make up the 1.2 million over the next 3 years.
So this budget has baked into it the assumption of a 1.3 cent tax increase for the firemen, and at this point a 1 cent tax increase for the capital. So that's a 2.3 right today, and you would need another 3.5 on top of the 2.3. So you're pushing 6% at that point.
6 cents, and that doesn't include 6 cents, and that doesn't include kind of making up the 400,000 gap each year for the next 3 years.
That
the
is right.
400, yeah.
That is correct. And Bonnie did provide everybody with the other big piece of paper that shows you on a blow-by-blow basis what that means to a household.
Now, I know you're trying to do this all you know, in like 2 or 3 years or whatever. But I mean, there are other ways to fill this one this year, because you still have 680,000 of available capital that's gonna get closed out and go in, if you don't do anything else with capital, and go into the general fund. You can use fund balance, which is very typical that fund balance is used to help reduce, you know, the rate. But those are unless you cut services, those are really the only options.
The issue, yeah, and I guess, again, I'm not gonna be sitting here in 3 years when it gets to that point, but somebody in 3 years is gonna face this dilemma. And so right now, if we just look at the 5.8 and an additional 2.8 to make up the 400,000, I guess it's 2.8, is that close to right? That's 8.6 cents just to get us where we need to be this year. If we took the 400,000 out, Lance, then our total number would be 8.6 cents
If you're covering the entire 900,000 with a tax increase, then my math doesn't go that far, but it looks about right. So,
And one of the part that we've talked about is the reasoning for the 1.2. The average person who dials in, or like the average person, they're not going to understand why. It appears that we have a bloated budget. I mean, that's the word they're going to use. But part of that is that 1.2 million what Robert was just talking about. And that was monies that were paying salaries through a back door, basically. Mm-hmm. Okay? We charge you more money for the sewer, and we took that money and we made, for 1.2 million of that money that we took, we paid salaries for it. Now that money's going away, but your sewer rates went down. So in the end, your sewer rates will be a little less than they were before, but we had to pick up that salary money somewhere. I don't know how we do that math. Your sewer rate went down X number of percentage, but the 1.2 million is some portion of that rate.
Yeah,
And we have to better verbalize it than certainly I'm doing here.
So that was part of, back in January when we were having this conversation, that was part of the materials that was provided, was sort of that analysis. The water sewer system was paying for what I would prefer to call shared services, right? And just because the water and sewer system goes away doesn't mean those services all go away. We still need a city manager, we still need an accounting department, we still need those sort of things. And when we gave the money back to the population through the reduced rates, which they have been enjoying for 4 months now, thanks to your vote, part of comes with that was the challenge of how we pay for the rest of this. So, you know, this big sheet here really does show you that, and if you recall, the conversation from back in January was your typical household will enjoy a $775 reduction in their utility costs. So, you know, there's hardly any scenario that I can see where, even with some sort of a tax increase, it still nets positive to the citizen.
I guess to shorten this all up, what we talked about in January, nobody remembers. Half of us don't remember.
I remember.
We got one citizen sitting in this room. We got to socialize it to a much bigger audience than that. And so I'll work with the manager and the board to come up with, so we're all talking on the same page, how we socialize and prepared to talk on June 17th about this tax and that tax and why we're doing this, that we have to have a better story and a concise story that we can tell as few words as possible.
But that story has got to be written by tomorrow, because there's a budget message that goes in front of the book.
In a land far,
Just
far
like
away.
I do, I'm ready to start writing it because I got notes everywhere to do that, and I could share it, but we got to turn this around.
So if I heard Lance, maybe you can just clear this up. You just said an average savings of $775 per, is it here? Thank you.
Yeah, wait, that is not it. Look at this, though. At the very bottom of the comparison of utility, that's on a property valued at 1.3 million.
No. Look at the,
Well, what he's saying is that the savings, the average water and sewer savings is $775. And so the benefit of that is, you know, on a $1.3 million home, or assessed value, 6 cents increase is kind of break even.
that's exactly right.
And so when you, that's not the average price in Southport.
Right, so,
When you go down to 400,000, we could go up 18 cents. And those people are still breaking even.
The way this is worded, I do not want people to think that we're saying the average property value is 1.3 million.
Correct,
That's all.
correct.
Because the way it's worded is not good.
What is the average property value?
yeah, it's somewhere between 4 and 5, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions of Lance? Okay, not hearing any. Anybody else have anything they want to throw into the pile? Otherwise, I'll be entertaining, I guess, a motion to adjourn. Right?
Are you going
Can we talk about sidewalk repairs again? I'm trying to go through and look at this and see where we might be able to cut a little bit.
Well, Rebecca, just to pick up on what you were asking about the events person, I would eliminate the full-time events person because, of course, y'all know yesterday I didn't want to be in the events business, so I said that. But especially now that we're adding another person and it's not as cost-effective as perhaps y'all might have thought.
It also, we're not taking into account that you'll have 7-day-a-week coverage in this building, and in theory, we'll have to try it out for a year, they would generate more money coming into this building. So we don't know the dollars and cents of all of that. We really don't know that. And the other issue here is that are we going to take control of our destiny in these events? Or are we going to allow nonprofits and 501c3s to run all the events on our property? And so we have to make that kind of decision. Those are philosophical decisions.
Well, one of the things I did want to point out, and I thought about it yesterday after the meeting, was in particular, one nonprofit did it with volunteers for free. Then the monies they made went back into the community. So it's not the same thing as trying to break even. That was volunteer.
There is a question about where did the money go to, that I don't want to get involved in this meeting about.
Well,
If we have,
when we're talking about what the tax paid by our citizens, we're talking like less than 1/10 of 1 penny. This is not how we make up this budget.
27,000.
Is insignificant. So,
But it's not insignificant. It's $27,000. And then there's another potential $50,000 that we could cut. And then there's another potential $9,000 that we can cut. So, it's not insignificant when we're looking at this entire budget.
Well, I think the only way to resolve the issue about the employee is to see if anybody wants to make a motion, see if there's a second, and then we'll move on. So we got to do something.
I'll make a motion to reverse what we did yesterday and no longer have a full-time position that puts the 2 part-time positions back in place.
Is there a second to that? There's a motion and a second. Is there any conversation?
Yes, I think that the reason that that persuaded me was that, not just as you put it, the control of our destiny, but control of the money that we do make from this. And other, outside groups that have had events, they make money and they do things for the community, but we will be in control of the money that we make, and we will decide where the
But we
money
need
will
to
go.
make at least $30,000 more in order to make it worthwhile.
And maybe it's not this year, but maybe it's next year.
And I
That-
can-
Yeah, focus on the mic.
We've got a motion on the floor, we got a second.
Okay,
We got to focus on this one issue.
okay.
So if you have more comments on this issue, I welcome that. We can move to the next topic, and I'm sure. Is there any other discussion about this topic?
It's a philosophical question at this point, and I think that you made your point, and I agree with.
So we're in a transitional year where we're changing over the finances of one aspect, but in this building, we're starting to take control of the 4th of July again. We're starting to take control of our festivals. We might not make a profit for a year or two, but we can't abandon it and let it fall to the wayside and then expect it to work. So we're going to invest in trying to make this building profitable at the same time, and giving 7-day-a-week access, and then also maximizing any profit or money that we can make on our festivals. We make the revenue rather than others subletting our stuff out and not getting the full amount back. So I feel like it's an investment in the future, even if it doesn't make money the first year.
I was for it yesterday, guys. I was for it. And it, at an additional $27,000, we have to make up $30,000 at least. Otherwise, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
On the overall, this is a transitional year. This is going to be the year that they remember us most, because this is where we've had to
Because we're
take on
increasing their taxes so much, they are going to remember us.
We gave away our asset that made money and paid the bills, and now we've got to face the results. That's where we're at. It's the transitional year where we now have to face the future without the enterprise fund that paid $1.2 million a year.
Yeah, and Alderman Spencer, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think that that's the conversation we've been saying all along, 1.2. And one of the issues that we face with that 1.2 being gone and all the money we made from that is that asset was deteriorating, and we didn't focus on it. And so I still feel very confident in the decision this board has, in the direction this board has gone with that. But right now, we need to make up for that. And I think Lance's, if you look at where we are, and everybody called us. I think every single one of us got a call about their water and sewer rates going down. Can't imagine you didn't. I even felt good about it, right? So now we have to make that up in tax increase. So you give with one hand, you take with the other, but if it's a wash, it's a wash. And that's the focus that needs to be in this budget right now.
I do want to say that our staff that are in place that have been dealing with these events this year have done a fantastic job. The community building has been wonderful and doing a fantastic job, and I'm not saying that I don't want to give you a person to do it. I'm just looking at our budget and going, it doesn't work.
And there's an alternative. They've been functioning, number one, and until we change how we're doing stuff, I don't know how much freer this building is to do these things. So I would opt to let this be a transitional year, not hire a new employee, a new full-time person. Let's stick with what we've been doing. They haven't lost money. The community building's budget pays for itself, and as it is. So I would opt with this information, of course, to not do that.
Remember, we're not just talking about the community building. We're talking about somebody who would handle markets and festivals and come up with ideas and things that would make money that we don't even have now. And this is something that we would be in charge of.
Well, and to that, one of the arguments that was made yesterday was that we'd be able to continue to maximize the value of this building. We complain every single time we meet about not having a space to meet. We want this space to come in here and sit down and meet. Do we really want to have to continue to compete with weddings and other events? So as a group, we need to decide, are we comfortable going here, there, and everywhere to meet? Or do we really want to use this building as a profit center?
But I think that we also need to think about the fact that it's not just this building that we're talking about. We're talking about all of the things that an events person would be able to focus on and maximize our revenue from. I mean, we should take our heads out of this building exclusively and look a little further. We got other things that we can spend some time talking about cutting.
Okay, Robert, I don't want to cut you off, but we probably need to have a vote and just do something. But if you have something that's urgent, please say it.
I had swallowed it. I was comfortable with where we left yesterday.
Okay.
The numbers.
Okay. All right, so the motion that's on the floor is to eliminate the full-time position that we had voted on yesterday. So all those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed, would you raise your hand and say aye? Aye. Robert? We're going to go with the employee, okay? We're going to hire we're going to go with the employee. We're going to hire, yes, yeah.
Can I draw our attention to the city buildings capital improvements?
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
we've been focusing on 27,000. There's other stuff in here, and I know that it seems like pennies on the dollar when we talk about this, but we have four instances in this list of trimming vegetation off buildings. That's 2,500 for Indian Trail, 2,500 for City Hall, 2,500 for Animal Protective Services. I think of that as the old jail annex. And then we have 5,000 to trim vegetation off of Fort Johnson.
You missed the city gym.
Oh, yes, I did. So that's another 25,000. 2,500. So my question is, what are we paying for? We already have staff that do that.
Well, Tom can address that, but let me just say one other thing first. This doesn't get you any further. If you cut this budget, this is all capital, you're going to close it out, goes into the fund balance. It doesn't help you fill that gap because you're looking to fill a recurring
But we can
expense.
take it from there, right?
Huh?
We can take it from the fund balance, right?
You can, but it doesn't sound like a lot of you
That-
want to do that.
that's-
That's my point.
We've got to learn to live within the means.
I mean,
And that means raising taxes sometimes.
we just
And it
spent,
means
what, 20
cutting
minutes
things
talking about
sometimes.
$27,000?
But this is
And I'm
capital.
citing a whole bunch of stuff that's actually, I know it's not actually it is going to be a recurring budget. You know, stuff grows over the course of a year. We're going to be looking at this again next year. I'd like an explanation of why we're spending $2,500 when we have staff that do it.
Okay, yeah. I just think at some point, Mayor, we need to find out where does the board want to go with the bottom line of this budget to fund it? Because you're spinning your wheels. You're spinning your wheels. So I'm not saying right now, but you got to vote. Are you going to raise taxes, and if so, by how much? So the staff can sit there and say, here's the gap. Okay, folks, or you made where you wanted to be. But going through this over and over isn't achieving what I'm hearing from the majority of you, and that's where I get very frustrated.
I think that if we don't do this, then we will be tarred and feathered. We have to, that's the community that we live in. They expect us to look after the dollars. And at the end of the day, for me, I'm only speaking for me, we're going to have to raise taxes. So that part of it is if you're looking for that. The question is, how much is that? And if we don't look at these numbers and have come to a vote on, even if it's a vote on each one of them, I don't care. The public will not be happy with us. We have to show due diligence, and that the fact that a piece of paper is put down in front of us, I looked at this when it first came to me, and because I was standing at Indian Head Trail, and I'm going, this is already done. Why is this?
Right, but what I'm saying is this doesn't get you to where you want to be. So let Tom finish, and then that's all I'm saying. Okay. It's not getting you anywhere.
I will gladly address the vegetation trimming. All these $2,500, $1,500, $5,000, $3,000, whatever it is. Sure, staff can do some of it, but I'll tell you what. Subtract all that out of the budget, then let me buy a $30,000 lift so my guys can get up there safely to do the job. That's what you're looking at. I can hire a professional to come out here and do it. There's already complaining and moaning and groaning all over Facebook, all over emails. Me and Heather hear it all the time. You need an arborist to do this. You know, I'm fine, Rich. We need an arborist to do this. Now you want my staff to go do it, and we'll do it. Let me take this out of the budget, and let me spend the money to purchase the equipment so my guys can get up there safely. It's the smaller buildings, easy. The higher buildings, that's where you have the problems.
Are you talking about tree trimming?
Vegetation off of buildings, the higher buildings. You know, it's easy to cut 10, 15 feet, but when you're talking about higher two-story buildings, it makes a difference.
So who's been doing it?
Off the low buildings, we can do it, but some of these...
Who's been doing it in the past?
Higher things, we contract that out. It may be one of three tree trimming companies we use. I mean, yes, these are numbers, these are higher numbers, and yes, it will be a recurring cost, not every single year, but every couple of years we have to do the same exact thing, but you have to look at the size of buildings and where they're at, the safety of the guys, the training of the guys. It's all relative. I understand what you're getting at, Ms. Lowe, but it's all relative in how you want to do. Spend the money to have someone come in once every couple of years to do it, or buy me a piece of equipment where my guys can do the job safely and efficiently one time. And I could even be an electric lift. I just feel like if you cut cost, you know, one way, you're going to add it in another. That's my only thing. I'll be glad to have the guys do it, but let me purchase the equipment. Let me get quotes to purchase the equipment to do such. And then you're right back to where you were. And the equipment will be an ongoing cost, just like the trimming would be every 2 to 5 or 3 years or whatever rate the vegetation grows.
Does it make sense to buy a piece of equipment and then have it sit idle for a while? You don't need to be trimming constantly.
I absolutely think it does not make sense.
Which is why we recommended going this route.
You buy a piece of equipment, you're going to have to maintain it whether it's being used or not. And if you bring in somebody from the outside that's an expert, they're going to get it done a lot quicker because they do it on an all-time basis. And
that's my point. You know, they do it safely, they know what they're doing, they have the equipment, and they have the liability of such. It's just one or the other. You add a cost here, you add a cost there.
This is not a yearly cost.
That won't be a yearly cost. Like I said, the rate of growth. And the way trees are dying around here, it may even be less than that.
Well, you have to remember that this came out of the building survey that we finally did. We'd never had one before. And he's not been able to get on the top of this building like this and get off of that vegetation, all that off, that creates the mold, that creates roof issues.
And then you know, my other point, that's what gets me excited is, okay, and this is simple, and it's, okay, if we drop out vegetation this year, is next year we're going to drop out water heaters to, hey, let's try and make it another year, and then we have a water heater burst, and then we got more problems to do it. It's just like, are we kicking cans down the road again to create more problems to save 3 cents this year? And I don't mean like tax cents, I just mean in general, I mean, which direction, I'll be glad to go whichever direction anybody wants me to do. I always have, and you know that. But I agree, we have to know and we have to have direction to do such.
As we look a little further down, city gym, $75,000 for interior finishes. And I would like to see that done. Is this the year to do it? Out there for you to think about.
That's a policy decision, so you guys got to decide that.
I mean, the high caps assessment made a very persuasive argument for this, but is this the year to do $75,000 worth of that? I mean, some things are necessary, for sure, window and door replacement, but $75,000 for the interior finishes, for me, that's a no for this year.
Are you making a motion on that, ma'am?
Is that necessary?
Well, if we want to move on.
Yeah,
we do.
we got to have consensus. Lo, you're the only one saying that.
So if you,
But the bigger issue is it's capital. So these are capital costs.
right.
So it doesn't get us anywhere closer to getting the budget where it needs to be
But once you,
this year.
tell me if I'm wrong on this, if we don't we take that line item off, then the money in the capital has to either be attached to a new line item or it goes back to some other fund. Is that correct?
And
That is correct.
And we could use money that we already have to fill the gap. Or we can focus on a future that is bright and make incremental adjustments to our tax rate to make up this shortfall.
Personally, I would rather work on that aspect of it. A combination of tax increases, monies that we have, and those type of, that part of the discussion than to necessarily do all of this. But that's just me talking.
And in the end, it doesn't matter where that $75,000 lives. It's real money.
Lance, can I ask you what the percentage is that we have? I want to say it was 86% in reserve in the general fund. Was it that high?
Somewhere between 81 and 86. I don't remember the exact, but it's in the 80s. Is the fund balance? The last time I did the math on it, I thought we had about $1.6 million that we could redeploy in some other way and still be within our requirement.
50%, that would still be within the 50%.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that, because you do have to be careful. You have a municipality that has a huge fund balance, you're overtaxing. You're overtaxing. And so if you're that high, that's high, then you can use, and I realize, Robert, it's a one-time to go towards a recurring, but that means you've overtaxed, and so therefore use it to bring it down.
Well,
Well,
another
one of
side of
the
that coin
issues-
is if you look at that window, all that water out there sometimes ends up over here. So we have to have a higher amount of money than somebody who's doesn't have hurricanes.
But it's way higher than what
And-
you wanted.
And don't we want to finish the shoreline stabilization? Don't we? Isn't that a goal of this board? So it's not, yeah, it's and don't we want to dredge to the Yacht Basin? I mean, these are wants, these are ideas, but that's why we need to save the money and find ways to create a sustainable. The can's been kicked too long, and that's how our sewer system got in the condition it was in. And now we've tried to make that up, and we haven't been successful at it. And
And I agree with you, but this is what I was saying before. You as a board have got to decide today what route you're going in order for us to get ready for tomorrow so you can hold a public hearing.
I believe Alderman Carroll made my argument for me. Thank you.
microphones.
So we got to go back low. We got to move on. So are you making a motion to postpone the $75,000 for another year?
Yes, I am. I
It-
move that we postpone spending the 75,000 on gym interior improvements until later.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second. Is there any conversation? Hearing none? I'm sorry, did you have something to say?
Are you putting a new floor in there? What is the interior of the gym going to be? What is that going to be? A new floor?
Tom, do you have the detail? I don't have the detail. I could give it to you if you give me about 10 minutes, but I got to go through this whole book to find it, so.
I didn't bring it.
So, I'm sorry, what, man?
So it's
Could
not-
we, so there's been a motion on the floor, there's been a second to the motion. All in favor of the motion to remove the $75,000 and leave it in the fund that it's in?
Just to put a fine point on it, is the floor, I think we should know what we're taking out.
All right, I'm looking
To
right
say
now.
interior finishes. Could Heather shed some light on it? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it was it from High Caps? Is that, yeah, and I don't have that study, so that's why I can't answer.
Okay, so we have windows, exterior doors. We got some roofing work that needs to get done, structural frame, facade work, building frame, building envelope.
But not the floor.
It's right here.
The list you gave me has window and door replacement for 10,000, and I surely do think that's necessary. But the complete renovation of interior
Dory's got one.
finishes at 75,000, that's what I want to take out this year. And that's what the motion on the floor is.
Did you take a vote? Oh, no, you were waiting. All right, Mark's good.
Mark's good?
The question has been, Mark's good, but you would like to know? Yep. Okay.
No, that's what I'm saying. I got structural frame and building envelope, building frame, facades. I can read this whole thing.
Is that what the 75,000 is, those
I
items?
believe so, yes,
So
'cause-
it's not interior, this is a misprint then. It's not interior finishes, everything you're talking about is outside stuff that needs to be done.
Interior finishes is listed in the High Caps report as immediate, and so is windows and exterior doors and landscaping.
Yeah, but they're looking for detail, Dory.
Detail, like the floors, bleachers, we're talking about finishes, not structural.
Well, if the roof is leaking.
Immediate repairs entail cost assessments that demand urgent action due, let's see, it doesn't really have examples there, hold on.
I would suspect the structural part comes from the fact that once you walk into the gym, that entire back wall, there's a crack that goes from the top diagonally kind of all the way across. We have put yes, we put stuff in there, but that is a structural issue. And so sometimes, we can literally feel if it's windy outside, if we're sitting there. So I suspect that's what that is.
But And it probably is, but on our paper here, it says complete renovation of interior finishes.
All right. Here
Cracks
it
in
is. I got it. It's immediate, 75,000 finishes, office area. Then he's got pictures, interior walls are a mess, the masonry blocks, ceilings are totally exposed. Anticipated actions include maintenance, repairs, replacement of the interior elements, and he's got pictures of walls that are coming out. Yeah, I mean, I could show you the pictures that are in here, and that comes to 75,000. Microphone.
This is interior finishes, and window and door replacements are 10,000, that's separate. So,
I'm getting ready to email it to him.
All right,
now these pictures do not specify exactly what all that is. The ceilings, the flooring,
but we
replacement
do-
of finishes and
Lo,
so
you
on.
have your motion.
I
You
yeah.
have your second.
I just got a question for the manager. Bonnie, when do you see us needing this $75,000 that we're going to put back into a fund, the general fund?
When do I need it?
My point is, we're putting money, we've already got $1.6 million
Yes,
available
correct.
in that fund,
Well, I
and we're
think-
adding $75,000 for what?
Well, I think what she wants to do is put it in the general fund, but as you said, then you're building up the general fund that you can use for shoreline or whatever else, if that's the way the board wants to move forward.
And but we can, so what year are we gonna tear down the old gym?
You know, that is
Immediately.
another discussion, that we need a new gym. And so that's one of the reasons I'm reluctant to spend 75,000.
All right, I'm going to call for a vote. We got to move forward. I'm sorry, but we just got to move forward. So, all those in favor of the motion to remove the $75,000 and put it back into the budget wherever it is supposed to go, would you raise your hand if you're in favor of that motion? Aye. All against? 4-2 against. Alderman Kelly, you had some other thoughts, I thought.
The sidewalk repairs, so there's $100,000 in the budget, but again, this goes back to the same thing when we're talking about capital fund expenditure versus some of the other things. Our sidewalks need to be safe. Is it really $100,000 worth of work that needs to be done for our sidewalks?
That, again, is a policy decision. I think since I've been here, I've had more complaints from each of you about lips that are sticking up, people tripping, hitting their heads. So that, again, it's a policy decision. We have never been given enough money to do the sidewalk repairs.
And I've called Miss Bonnie, and she's jumped right on it every single time I've called. But I have seen people trip. Tom and his team, I don't know who comes out there, but it gets done. And within hours, it's over. But we need to be proactive so it doesn't get to that point to begin with.
We actually need $1 million for sidewalks, so 100,000 is not that much money when it comes to sidewalks.
Well, I think, Lo, you were the one who called me on Howe Street. Woman tripped, hit her head, and I'm surprised we weren't sued. And let's put it this way, we're talking about it now, we're on notification.
This is
Our
the year you should have
sidewalks are
known.
just fine and no problem for anybody, but I think we ought to spend the 100,000.
I walk them in stilettos.
The problem is, you've got people that live in this town that are older. I hate to tell you that, but they are. And their walking is not that stable.
Hold on. Alderman Kelly, are you making a motion?
No, I'm going to angrily sit here with my arms crossed.
Okay, with your stilettos. There is no motion. We're moving it, we're moving on. Any other comments? Frank, you have your light on. Are there any more comments for in regards to this? So the only issue that I think is left is the big issue, it's like how we're paying for it. Okay, so Robert, I'm going to let you start that conversation to stir the debate.
Well, I think that what we have to focus on is a combination of what Alderman Spencer started with up front weeks ago, which is using the $1.2 million not in 1 year, but over time. And at the same time, we have to find a way to overcome that gap, not for year 1, but for year 1, 2, and 3, so that by year 4, we've met that gap fully. Also keeping in mind that there's inflation and other things. So how do we do that? Do we take from the general fund, or do we raise taxes?
So my question is that when you and Lance were talking about this, I was a little confused. We talked about the total amount of money that would be needed to replace the $1.2 million, which was X number of cents. And so we're not replacing $1.2 million this year, we're replacing $400,000. So we could do this incrementally. Okay.
That's my recommendation. And so these numbers that I've been playing with are in doing that. So that's making it up over the 3 years. We're using $400,000. We still have a deficit of 505.
Correct.
So we still have a deficit of 505. So we have to make not only the 400,000 up this year, but we've got to find the 505. And where do we take that from? Do we take that from the general fund and only increase the tax rate by the 400 and whatever it is?
What's a split look like? You take half of the remaining 500 and you put out of the general fund and half of it in tax, just to kind of smooth it all out.
500,000 would be 3.5 cents about.
I'm paying 2.5, half of that.
1.7 cent is what he's saying. So we'd have the 400,000, which equals 2.3 cents, plus an additional 1.7 cent. And the 505, we'd split in half between a tax hike and the general fund.
You're losing me just a little bit. Let me say this. Let me say this back. So the 2.3 that you just referred to, that's baked into where we are. Okay. So now we take 400 out of the reserve from the water sewer fund. Now we have 505 to make up. So if you wanted to take 250 of that out of the general fund, and then you take another 250 in tax increase. So if you figure 145,000 is a penny, you're talking about, you may have done the math on the 1.7, is that where you kind of got to? You take $250,000.
And the 2.3 that's baked in is the 400,000? It's not. So we need to make up the 400,000 as well. Well, we need to make it over the next 3 years, because by year 4,
So if you make up the 400,000 this year, you're not taking anything out of the 1.2 reserve.
No, I'm saying we'd take it out of the but in 3 years, we're going to be in a position where we're down by $1.2 million all over again, if we don't raise taxes incrementally over the next 3 years, correct?
Yeah, you're right.
Can I just ask a quick question? Lance, did you put in the motor vehicle tax into today's analysis?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Damn you.
It's the very first thing on your sheet.
one way or another, we gotta make up the 1.2 million somehow. I mean, that's there, we know. We're gonna take part of it out, but somehow it's gotta be backfilled.
Let me see if I'm following it.
You're taking $400,000 out of this pocket to put it over here to pay for something. Then you're gonna raise taxes to make up $400,000.
Because in 4 years,
I understand that, but when the $400,000 comes in from the taxes, what are you gonna do with it?
you're going to put it in the general fund so that in 4 years you've met, because otherwise when you, at year 4, you're going to be short $1.2 million and you're going to raise taxes 10 cents. In one.
As long as we're going to put it.
We're not necessarily going to be, maybe I'm not getting the math, but we're not necessarily going to be in year 4 needing the 1.2 because we're doing them incrementally. I'm not understanding.
Also, don't.
I get you, but this is what, but my point is, I want to go back to I hear you. I'm not saying not that. I'm going to go back to Alderman Spencer's conversation. This is a transitional year. This is the first time we're doing it without, and if I'm not mistaken, the 1.2 is, I thought it was more like 1.6 that was the difference. It was 1.2 that was the difference from the, so, but this is what I would suggest. I agree with Alderman Carroll that we know that the 2.3 is baked in. I'd like to think about so that leaves us basically 500,000. If we take the 400 from the 1.2, leaves us 500,000. Yeah, I would like to split that between a tax increase and general fund. That's what I'd like to do. And the reason I'm saying is because of what Alderman Spencer said about this is transitional and our best shot at it.
We're restructuring our city. So restructuring is what we're doing. And we need the years to see what we'll need in year 4. And I like that. My suggestion, and again, we'll come to that, is the 400, 255, and 3%.
It's actually 4 because we're baked in the 2.3
Is that
cents
not in the,
and then the 1.7.
That's in the 900 that we gap.
No.
So that's a 650,000. That's a 600. We got the 2.3 plus an additional 650,000. So the 650 is, which is the 4 plus 250, ends up being about 4.5 cents. So that's a 4.5 cent hike in taxes plus 2.3 plus stealing money from the general fund.
We're borrowing.
Using money from the general fund sounds better.
Let me say this back. If you take 250 from the general fund and 400 from the water sewer fund, then you're to break even at that point for this year. You're talking about 4 cents in total. The 2.3 that's baked in, and the 1.7 that would take to do the extra 250. And I think this is what you're saying. Taking it out of the general fund is not necessarily a sustainable thing for that many more years, and so you have to make up the 400 plus the 250 at some point, and then I lost you from there. So,
that's every year for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, how long do we want to do that? So right now we're at 4. Well, you'd have to. Because you still have to make up the $400,000 that we're not going to have in 4 years.
He's correct.
Can you quickly run those numbers? Can we do that and just
Yeah,
kind
if
of
you want to take like a 10-minute break?
Yes, please.
Yes, that sounds like an excellent idea.
Lance, and
I always always say when this happens, leave the finance director alone, because he's got to figure all this out. I know.
to bring the meeting back into order. So, Lance, would you be so kind as to go to the podium and go through this with us, please?
Okay, so this is about a day's worth of work done in 10 minutes. If you see anything I did wrong, point it out to me, please. And I will tell you that I'm about to have another version of this printed that clarifies, doesn't change the numbers, but it clarifies it a little bit. So we're starting with the gap that we have today, unadjusted gap, as we stand today of $904,000. Baked into that $904,000 is that we have a 1 cent tax increase for capital, and then we have the tax increase for the firemen that have to be funded. So really, we're funding $1.2 million this year with all of those items baked in. The out years, the 26 through 30 out years, I've inflated all of those numbers by 5%. For the purposes of this analysis, there's going to be inflation in each of those numbers. So how we pay for that leaves $1.2 million gap this year through $1.5 million gap in FY30. So this year, the first scenario is we use $400,000 of the water sewer fund. We take $250,000 out of the general fund. We have a 4% tax increase, which is paying for the firemen, paying for the capital, and then funding.
That's 4 cents, correct? Not 4%.
4 cents, yes, sir. That pays for the firemen that you've already voted on, the capital you've already voted on, and half of the gap, half of the remaining gap. So it covers our total gap. We have nothing remaining, 4 cent tax increase. Now, here's where this is a little misleading. That's why I've got the next version being printed. The next year, 2026, says it's a 4.8 cent tax increase. That's cumulative. That's not next year. So I've got another version that just tells you what the annual number is. But so essentially it was a 0.8 cent increase the next year. And to the point that Mr. Carroll was making, you get out to 2028, you've spent all of your water and sewer reserve money, and now all of a sudden you've got another 4 cent or so tax increase staring you in the face in 2028. I will say that the other thing to notice is that we're weaning ourselves off of the general fund by $50,000 a year in this scenario, because that is not something we can continue to sustain forever. But at less than $1 million over time, I think we could afford to do it. The alternate scenario, and this one can be tweaked, is that instead of taking $400,000 a year out of the water sewer fund, we take half of that, spread it out over 6 years. The same with the general fund. We continue to wean ourselves at $50,000 a year off of that. That would mean that in that scenario, you would raise this year's taxes by 6 cents, and then you wouldn't have the big jump in 2028. You would have modest amounts going forward, and you can see that we would basically keep $100,000 a year in the general fund for the first 3 years, and then kind of respend that in the later years. Like I said, Elena ran out to print the version that shows you what the annual cent amount is, but it's really the difference. But those are cumulative numbers. It's a difference between year after year.
Thank you, Lance.
Go ahead, Robert.
I appreciate you putting my thoughts on paper. I think this is the reality we're faced with. And we can choose to do it in scenario one, which looks real good in the short term, but long term, somebody's going to have to make a decision. Or we can do it in scenario two, where it's using this money over a more gradual period of time and not increasing taxes such large amounts each year.
The other thing that I think is important, that the money is the money. We lost this money from the water sewer fund. We all wanted to have lower rates. So according to the lower rates, the average savings for water sewer is around $775 a year annually. So if you go and look at 6% that's beside that, 6 cents, I'm sorry, thank you. 6 cents, and if you do the math, say 450, I'm just using 450,000 as an average price, that homeowner would be paying $270 a year for that 6 cents, which they're saving $775. So that's what we've got to lean into. That's what this transition is. We're going from our water sewer fund paying for things to our ad valorem tax paying for things, and the homeowner pays for both, had paid for both of them. So that's what we've got to lean into. It. I know it's shocking to us to say, "Oh my God, but we did a 10 cent when we needed to do it." So, but this is being driven because the money is the money, and it's not that we've all of a sudden inflated the budget. It's that this money has got to be replaced, and we've got to be thoughtful about how to do it. And I appreciate Alderman Carroll's fervor in trying to sort. So, but that to me is still, that's almost a $500 savings annually with a 6 cent increase.
That's how we have to. That's what's got to be explained. That even though there isn't an increase, there is still the savings based on what they're getting back from the water sewer.
I guess I'm going to ask, certainly not today, because is that we used 3 different prices of houses before. Can we stick to those same prices so we're always uniform and figure out what that would be?
Yes, we'll work on that overnight.
Thank you.
So are we going to ask for consensus on this?
I think we're going to just vote to put this into the budget, not vote to put it into
Well,
practice.
you've got 2 scenarios, so you got to
So we
figure
have
out
to
which
do,
one you want.
we'll have a motion to do something, and if that doesn't work, we'll go for the next one.
I'd like to move that we adopt scenario 1.
So that's, I'm sorry, so that's the 4.06?
Yep.
Okay.
So is there a second to that motion? Okay, not hearing one.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the alternate scenario, which would increase taxes by approximately 6.13 cents this year, and a significant amount less over the next few years.
Is there a second to that? There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
We're coming off the 400 with that suggestion. We're not taking 400, we're taking 1/6, which is 200,000 over 6 rather than, okay.
Any other comment, thoughts?
I have a really hard time raising taxes like this. I understand the thought process, and I appreciate the fact that it's spreading it out over a longer period of time, and looking towards the future and what we're going to need in the future. But I just think we still have opportunities to cut the budget in a way that doesn't require us to do this.
Any other comment? Okay. All those in favor of number 2, if you would raise your hand and say aye, please. All those opposed? No. So it's 4-2. I'll obviously be revisiting this when we go into the real budget. So there's opportunities to look at it again.
Okay, you're not done. You got to do electrical.
So help me out here on the electrical. I don't know if there's much choice except to say, yes, we're going to do it. And then the only other issue is to figure out how we got into this, how did these numbers come about? But I don't want to do that tonight, because we have to put something into the budget tonight. So, am I on the right path? There's no options for us, is there?
No.
Okay. So. I'd entertain a motion to accept the electrical fund budget recommendation
Recommendations, yeah.
to go into the budget for the public comment. Is there a second? Is there any comment? All in favor say aye and raise your hand, please. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, Dory and Lance, is there any other budgets they need to approve?
Yes. Powell bill. Powell bill.
Well, Powell bill is Powell bill, but still, just make a motion to
Okay.
accept the
I'd
money.
entertain a motion to accept the Powell bill money. Any conversation? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Anybody, anything else?
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.